And welcome to our third of 3 events. We're going to hear tonight, as I mentioned, about a different topic within strip till. We're going to hear from 4 different growers, and if the last couple of events are any indication, I hope we'll have lots of questions from the audience and a really great chance to talk about some of the intricacies of strip till. So just a couple of housekeeping items for general participants. If you guys actually could turn your videos off, I know Zoom's a great way to see each other, but just for simplicity, because we've got large numbers, please keep yourself unmuted, or sorry, keep yourself muted and keep your video off if you're just a general participant, so that everybody can see the speakers. If you have any technical questions, or if you're having any issues on the Zoom side of things, my colleague Nicole Rabe is our tech support. You can see her in the chat under Nicole R, and she's got that in her name, tech support. So feel free to reach out to her. Ben Rosser is going to be our panel discussion moderator. So like I mentioned in the past couple of events, or if you're new to this event, we really would love to hear your questions. So as the farmer speakers are presenting, please send your messages either in the chat to everybody, or you can send them directly to Ben Rosser, and he'll collect those and then post them to the group as we start. So you can go to the next slide there, Sebastian. So this evening, we're going to be hearing from 4 different speakers. We're going to hear from Mike Cornelissen, Tyler McBlain, Jake Kraayenbrink, and Kyle Decorte. As we've done in the past couple of events, they're each going to have 5 or 6 minutes to present, or maybe 7 minutes. We're going to hope to have those presentations short and sweet, get them done within about half an hour, and then have a good chunk of time for a panel discussion, as I mentioned, moderated by Ben Rosser. I'll highlight some of the Farm and Food Care strip till video series that are soon going to be released just before 8 o'clock, and that's kind of your cue that we're kind of near the end of our formal segment of the evening. For CCAs, that's your time to get your link to sign up for your CEU credits for this evening. And after that point, from about 8 till 8:30, we're going to continue on with an optional Q&A for everybody that wants to stay on. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Cornelissen to start us off with our grower presentations.
Hey, I'm Mike Cornelissen, Watford, Ontario. We have a cash crop operation, which is corn, beans, and wheat. We have livestock on our operations. At the moment, we have broilers, and we have some sow barns we rent out, and etc. And we have a greenhouse as well. Next slide. So my dad started no-till corn in about 1987. The concept of our planter hasn't changed much over the years. I guess most people would call it zone tillage. It is 3 coulters per row, which you can see in the picture here. So it's kind of like the same idea as strip till. We still do a lot of no-till corn today. We're on our 4th planter with this setup on it. And main reason why we moved towards strip till is we were struggling in our wheat stubble, getting a good corn establishment every year. So we started looking a little bit more into other options, and strip till seemed like the best fit for us. So about 2005, we hired Ken Nixon to do custom strip till for us a couple of years. And in 2007, we purchased our first strip tiller. Next slide. So this was a concept also along the way. We call this a residue manager. So the original idea was this thing was to refreshen our strips in the spring, try to dry them out a bit quicker. It didn't work to plan, so we have modified it to 20-inch rows. So we run in from the planter that you've seen with the zone tillage or no-till. Basically what it does, it has residue cleaners on it to move the residue out of just a clean a little path where we're going to plant a couple days later. We also used to blow fertilizer on with it. We had a Montague cart, which worked really well. And that's another way of, I guess, strip till, just a little bit different practice of it. and we like the concept of just managing the area you need to. Next slide. So this is our first strip tiller. It was a John Deere unit. At first, we didn't do any fertilizer. We were just using it for the tillage part. It was a shank strip tiller. Main reason why we started with this one, there was a reasonable price on it. It was a demo. Very simple unit. Got us started in it, and yeah, the results were okay. But we wanted to add fertilizer and try some different things, so we moved to a Dawn strip tiller. Next slide. So this is our second strip tiller. It was a Coulter system. So this is doing strips into wheat stubble in the fall. It does do nice strips in the right soil conditions. So this Dawn strip tiller also uses 3 Coulters, mixes the soil well. We had at the beginning, our Montag has, this Montag had 2 tanks on it, so you could blend 2 products variable rate on the go. So in this setup, we were mixing our fertilizer in the strip. When we first purchased the unit, we also had a banding tube. So we test difference between banding our fertilizer and mixing our fertilizer in the strip. And we've seen no yield difference between the 2 different placements. So we end up moving all to mixing in the strip just for simplicity reasons, less plugging, a little bit more simple setup. The other concept when we first purchased this unit is we thought we were going to do a 2-pass system, which some people do, especially the guys with soil warriors, if they have, some guys play with that a little bit. So we thought we'd try the same concept with the Dawn. So we were running about 5 inches to 6 inches deep in the fall, and then coming back in the spring about 1.5 inches deep. So we tried a couple of years of plots with that. And from our experience, it was the best just do a stale seed bed if you could. So that's where we have moved towards. We also played around a lot with different fertilizer placements, placing all the fall fertilizer in the fall, placing it in the spring, doing 50-50. And we didn't see much of a difference with that. So we have moved to putting most of the fertilizer in the fall through the strip. Next slide. So this is our present unit. So we actually still using our John Deere frame. We removed the units off the frame and we mounted these John Deere units on it. And we also got a new air cart since. We originally had a Montag with our Dawn strip tiller. Now we have a John Deere 1910 3-bin cart variable rate. The big reason why we went to this cart versus some other carts is we wanted to be able to variable rate 3 products on the go, which was becoming more and more important for us. So that was a big reason to go to the 3-bin John Deere cart. We decided to go back to a shank unit. We found with Coulters, either in spring, if the soil was very, I mean, early summer, if the soil was very hard, we would struggle sometimes getting the Coulter in the ground. Or if we got really late in the fall, we would find we sometimes have plug-in issues on our heavier soil in the strip tiller. So that was one of the reasons why we moved back to the shank unit. I would say both units, the Coulter unit and the shank unit, both struggle in wetter conditions, but we found the shank unit works in the drier conditions, can get through it a little bit better. And with us doing most of our strips on wheat stubble, we're able to do that most times, try to get it done in August or early September. So that's kind of the way we went. We do strip till some bean stubble, but it's a bit of a mix between strip till and no till. Depends a little bit on the fall and the farm and how many heavy spots are on it. So that's kind of where we went with that. Next slide. So this is, the unit we have now, like I said, has 3 tanks on it. So we can blend 3 products on the go. It's a 430 bushel cart. So we're doing around 60 acres of fill up. We don't fill it right full, but fairly full. We are blending, like I said, 3 different products on the go. We're doing around 600 pounds of fertilizer per acre, up to maybe 800 at the max. But we like to keep it around 600, enjoy the field, just for plug-in issues of the fertilizer. We also like to travel. I think we found out with all of our strip tillers, travel speed is important. So we like to be at least 6 miles or a little bit quicker. We have on this long unit, we do have implement guidance. So this is not the system that has a hitch moving. This is a system that just moves your tractor back and forth, which you can see in this picture with the extra beacon on the unit. Yeah, so this is kind of, like I said, this is our third strip tiller. So we kind of, what we learned over the last couple of years, and this is our feeling, is our combination of everything to our ideal strip tiller setup. I would say the biggest negative of this setup is such a long unit, small fields. It's not the funnest unit to run in. And if you have a lot of headlands back in this unit on headlands, it's not as easy as some of the other units. Next slide. So this is planting in no-till. Our next slide will be planting in strip-till. So I just want you guys to kind of see kind of what the difference is. So this is bean stubble. So just comparing the planting in both cases in bean stubble. Like I said, for us, strip-till and wheat stubble is, in our opinion, the only option. We used to no-till corn into wheat stubble. And basically, out of 5 years, we had 2 crops that failed. And in today's, can't have that. So that's when we started looking at the strip-till option. Since we moved strip-till now, we've been, we're over 13, 14 years strip-tilling now. We had very good luck strip-tilling the wheat stubble. Our biggest issue when we were no-tilling the wheat stubble was slugs, and we haven't seen that with strip-till. And the other kind of thing was too, when we used to no-till wheat stubble, that was the last farm we planted. Now strip-till allows us to be in the wheat stubble when the first farm was planted. And we normally strip-till some bean stubble just to get out there a little bit, give us somewhere to start in the spring. The strip-till, in my opinion, is probably one of the systems that allows you to get you on the land quicker than any other system, even conventional. So yeah, like I said, this is us no-tilling into bean stubble. Next slide. And then this is us planting onto strip-till. So this is stale seedbed in the spring. Like I said, we tried the heading in the spring pass and trying to work the strip a little bit, but over the 5 years of data we compared the two, we found that the highest, most economical, not highest yield, but the most economical was stale seedbed. So you can see this is kind of the same results. It looks similar as a no-till, maybe a little bit more loose dirt, but we're happy with both systems in the bean stubble, and like it's definitely worked very well for us. Next slide. So this is our manure spreader. It's a vertical beater manure spreader. We do all of our boiler manure we try to put on right before we strip till. So we have a quite large manure storage, so we'll store it all. And then we try to always have a cover crop on our wheat stubble. So we always plant red clover. If it doesn't make it, we come in and drill oats. As soon as the cover crop is established, when it's oats, we'll come in and spread our manure on. We're only about a ton an acre, so we keep it fairly light. And then we'll come in shortly after that to strip till it. So we're kind of using an idea, a little bit of cooperation with the strip till, but we're trying to use mostly the cover crop to hold that fertilizer, or try to keep it a little bit in place and use up the nutrients from it. And then with liquid manure, it depends on time of year. We have dragged hose after we strip till before, and we also have dragged hose before we strip till. So it depends a bit on time of year. If you're strip tilling like bean stubble and you're laying in a year, we normally go after we strip till because we could find such a delay waiting for it to dry out again. But if you're stripped or put manure on wheat stubble, we normally do it before the strips because you normally have enough time to let it dry out again. So that's a little bit what we do with manure. For us, it's a fairly simple system. We just spread it light, even, and it seems to work good for us. So.
Thanks very much, Mike. We're now going to hear from Tyler McBlain. Go ahead, Tyler.
All right, next slide. Next slide, might as well go right to the next one. All right, as I said, Tyler McBlain. I'm farm with my wife, my now 3 kids, and my parents. Next slide. Actually, we farm. We're the eastern end of Brant County, so we actually farm Haldeman Clay. we do farm 3 different counties, so we do have a varying soil type, but majority of our land's on heavy clay. We run cash crop custom farming business, corn, soybeans, wheat, oats, and rely heavily on cover crops. We've been no-tilling wheat and soybeans for a long time, since late 80s, and then strip tilling for the last 4 years. Next slide. So when we got into it, we looked, and with our heavy clay, we didn't want a shank machine. We wanted to be coulters. It need to be heavy to get into the ground because it becomes like cement at times. So we end up with a 12-row Soil Warrior. Next slide. It's only set up for their shallow system. We do not run their deep system. So it's a 3 coulter system. In the fall, if we run it, we're running that 5-inch depth approximately. In the spring, I like to keep it in the 2-inch. It's banding the fertilizer, so it blows the fertilizer between the 2 coulters. The strip is give or take 10 inches wide, and we're, like I said, depending on time of year, 5 inches to 2 inches deep. Next slide. So fertility for us is we're a system approach. So before we get into the strip tiller, we do all our farms are in the process of being zone sampled. So we like to take as much variability out as possible. So it's all the PK line is all variable rate spread to try and level out take all the variability that we can control out of the farm. We own our own tiling machine, so we tile as much as we can. It's a work in progress, but trying to take that variability out. So that way, when we're going with our strip tiller, we're running with our fertilizer program, it's crop removal rates based on projected yields. Next slide. So we have 2 different programs depending what we're doing. If we're running in cover crops, we run a 2-pass program with a fall and then a spring freshen pass. In the fall, we're spreading or blowing in, it's a PK blend, and then the spring is more PK, and then our micros of zinc, magnesium, sulfur. And then in our soybean stubble, we run just a single pass in the spring, which is basically putting that all up front in the spring. Next slide. So we still run dry fertilizer on our corn planter. So in the spring pass, it's running, we're splitting that pass approximately 50-50 as far as rates. So if we're putting 300 pounds down in the spring, 150 is going down with the corn planter, and then approximately 150 is going down the strip tiller. It is variable rated, so it'll be anywhere from 120 to 200 pounds, depending on what the map's calling for. Next slide. So this is just showing, again, that's our variable rate pass and the spring pass with the strip tiller based on the zones, based on our sampling. The corn planter is a straight rate in the 2x2, but then we're the strip tiller variable rates. Next slide. So for N, we're putting up front, we're running a weed and feed of about 20 gallons per acre with this up front, and then we come back, there's approximately another 25 pounds of N in the strip between the blend and the 2x2. And then we come back V8, V10 as late as we can sometimes, and we're going in with Y drops, with running a heavy cover crop program, and even just with the residue in the soybean stubble, like to get that N right through the plant base, just so it's not tied up. Or we used to run in with a coulter machine to inject it, but again, getting it into the ground just so it's not being tied up by all that residue or the cover crop. So where we're going with it is we're trying to eliminate actually fertilizer on our corn planter to speed up efficiency and actually make the cost of corn planter cheaper and spend more money on technology. Started with some trials this year of running all the fertilizer in the strip with the strip tiller versus just with the corn planter, or sorry, splitting with the corn planter. 1 year data, the farm it was done this year was a good ground, decent fertility rates. So it basically showed no difference. One plot did have a little noise in it. There was a little noise in that plot, but otherwise what we seen was no difference. We had it on another farm too, again, showed no difference. So we'll run this another year or two on some heavier ground, some tougher ground, but our goal is basically take all our fertility and put it down with the strip tiller. So we do need to upgrade the strip tiller, I guess, to a little more capacity to make that happen. Unlike everyone else, we have no manure, so we use green manure as I said, as a cover crop. So we're a little different, and unfortunately wish we had manure unlike everyone else here. So, anyway.
Thanks, Tyler. Now we'll move on to Jake Kraayenbrink. And Jake, if you just turn your video on there, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me there fine?
You're great. Go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. Yeah, Jake Kraayenbrink. We're from Moorfield, Drayton, Arthur area. And we're hog farmers. We don't farm a lot of land, but what we do, we try to do well. Here's a picture. We tried something different this year. We side dressed with a liquid manure tank, and then this year after the wheat, what we did was we have a coulter system on the manure tank. We can go 15-inch or 30-inch coulters, and we put oats in the tanker, and we put about 20 pounds to the acre on. And the tanker has a noon tank has an agitation system, and we're experimenting here. This is the more of the back of the farm, and we're pretty pleased with the results of what we see of the oats here. Next, here this was, I believe, I had the dates, but in September. The oats here is growing nicely, and what our plan is, and we burnt that down, and we're going to be strip tilling where the oats are, and then we're going to plant into that strip. So this way we have a kind of a hot zone for the crop that's being planted. Next. Here you see we're actually, this is putting manure down prior to planting wheat, and we have a coulter system on this, and we put it every 15 inches, and we put about 2,000 to 2,500 gallons down, and you'll see the next picture, I believe. This is right behind the tank. You'll see some manure. There's about a 4 to 5 inch just straight cut into the ground, and that'll disappear very quickly. But that's prior to planting wheat. Next picture. Here we strip till. We have a Kuhn strip tiller, and we've had that since 2014. This Kuhn's got a shank on it, and it's worked quite well for us. We've been fairly happy with it. The big thing we find is that with anyone else too, is that your GPS has to be dead on to work well. We've also learned a little bit that, especially if the strip is just questionable a little bit, we like to pull a roller over it prior to planting corn, especially. We get a better seed contact that way. When the strip is rolled down, we'll try to make it as narrow strip as possible. Next. Here you see us, the unit we had in 214, and we did custom work with it there. Go to the next one. And here we are again putting manure. This is prior to planting wheat. You see we have the wide tires on there. Yep, go to the next one. This is where we actually did the strip, our injecting in the manure with the oats mixed in, and it made a little bit of like we put a coulter that was not a straight coulter on for that. Next one. Here you see the strips made with the Kuhn strip tiller. We're quite pleased with it here, how it looks, and this farmer as well been doing for the last 6 years, and we seem to learn a little bit sometimes each year, and then we don't always know what we've learned, but we try to pay close attention to what we're doing and what we've done, and we've been seeing really good results on yields from the practice we're doing with the strip tilling and then side dressing with manure after the corn is up. Next. Yeah, this is, I think, a video of the strip tiller working. You see there's, it leaves a nice strip, and this is nice soil too. But when the soil is dry enough, it works really well. If the soil is too damp, then then it leaves a bit of a slit in the ground, and it's not as productive. Next slide. Okay, here is side dressing into corn. We did this with a shank before, and then you'll see on the back, there's kind of like hoses that we blow a cover crop on. We have experimented with that, and it has worked. However, we've gone away from the shank because it does disturb a lot of soil, and we put a straight coulter on. So we changed the injector, and we put a straight coulter. It doesn't cover up quite as nicely as with the shank. However, the manure does, especially pig manure, will go quickly disappear, and we feel we lose very little on it, and we've been seeing yields that we're really pleased with. So yeah, next one. And here you see us again. This is video. Now this is with the coulter system, or no, with the shank system, and it does do a nice job, but it disturbs quite a bit of soil. Whereas the straight coulter will do just a straight slit in the ground about 4 to 5 inches deep, and we're finding that we do less disturbance of the soil, and that's the whole idea. What we try to accomplish with the strip tilling is to reduce the amount of disturbance of soil, and the whole idea with the strip tilling too is you never drive where that plant is placed in the soil to reduce the compaction component. Next. Okay, this is my wife. We do in a bean field, we do twin row soybeans in the strips, and we've been extremely pleased with the results of what we see with the soybeans into the strips. We can reduce our population quite a bit, and we're seeing really good results on that. So that's all I have for you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jake. And just as we go into our last speaker, just a reminder for anybody who has questions, please send them to Ben Rosser, or you can send them in the chat, and I'll hand it off to Kyle now.
Oh, just a minute here. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Decorte. I farm with my family outside of Seaforth. We are mainly clay loam, as well as some heavy clay knolls and spots. We are running an Orthman strip tiller, shanks in the fall, and coulters in the spring. We don't have any fertilizer on the planter, and we also still do some conventional till as well, because that still works good as well. So not going to focus too much on the equipment here. Going to try to stay on fertility. So next slide. So we're growing grain corn, soybeans, as well as white beans, all on strips. We do a bit of custom work, and we do have some friends who we are actually, I think, in their 4th year of corn on corn with strips, and it's for their dairy operation. It's working very well for them as well. Like I said, I think we'll kind of focus mainly on grain corn here with the short time we have. So next slide. So we kind of have 2 systems where we farm. Basically, all of our wheat stubble gets a cover crop, and we're lucky enough to have a lot of access to hog manure, as well as our own broiler manure. So we rarely have to strip any P and K in the fall. So we kind of just run that shank machine there through the wheat stubble. We are running a 7,200 gallon tandem tank, so pretty heavy footprint, but we find the shank takes care of that. So like I said, we're not usually having to go chase any fertility in that wheat stubble. And then down below, that's kind of a farm that's not in a wheat rotation and doesn't see much manure, if any. So we are we're soil testing quite often, and using MAP and potash to target what we want to achieve there. We are twin rowing our soybeans with some removal P&K. So we're stripping before the soybeans, and we do come right back on top of that row and hope to use up any residual soybean fertilizer for the corn. Next slide. So yeah, when we, that's kind of the shank unit there that we're using. When we are putting P&K on, we were kind of talking with Greg Stewart this summer, and we kind of decided we think we're a little bit too deep. We're shanking about 5 to 6 inches, and kind of think we are kind of hiding that fertilizer. So this year we modified it. We brought the fertilizer tube up and kind of torched out the I guess you'd call it the shin where the fertilizer drops, but just seeing what we did this summer, it didn't really work. That fertilizer still falls down as deep as that shank wants to go. So it's still in there at 6 inches, but maybe we'll try something next year. Next slide. So this is our spring setup. Some fancy work there with the drawing, but the original fertilizer nozzle we had was pointed right in front of our double coulters, and we almost found that was bringing it kind of back into a band right where our seed was. We found we did have some burn that year, so we modified that, and our fertilizer nozzles now at the back by the closing disc, and it's just kind of the rolling baskets just tickling in there a bit. So in the spring, we try to keep all of our fertilizer blend the same in the spring. We target our P&K levels in the fall. But we are running 80 nitrogen, 40 phos, 20 potassium, then 10 sulfur, and some zinc and boron all in that spring strip. And we have moved to 50% ESN just to help with that any fertilizer issue, and do like the slow release. It's a bit of a expensive product, but it seems to work good. So yeah, we are hoping to move up to about 100 units of nitrogen this year just to get a little bit more on up front. So this slide here, you can see we are coming back with Y drops for the remainder of the nitrogen, just depending on the yield potential of that crop, we will change our rate. And there's our little Amazon spreader. We find we're into some build. We need some build on some potassium levels yet. So we are still doing some bulk spreading as well as spreading some MAP before wheat. So we're kind of really trying to address crop to crop yet. On the bottom, we tend to still drag line some manure. If we have to go over the strips at all, we drag line, or if it's at all damp out, we try to keep the tank in the shed. But that is my friend Adrian and Lorenz Gutensberger. They could probably help you. They're both on Twitter. They could help you with that, but that's hard to see. But that's about 2 or 3 leaf corn that they drag lined through. Scares me. I'm not going to do it, but that is the corn to the right, I believe, pretty much in the same spot. And yeah, it bounces right back, and they have really good looking crops too. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Kyle. So at this point, we're going to welcome Kyle, Tyler, Mike, and Jake to all, as you guys have, turn your videos on. Thanks very much. And get Ben on as well to lead a discussion. So Ben, I will hand it over to you now.
Can you hear me, Jake?
You're good, Ben.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the speakers as well. That was a good talk. So yeah, this is the panel discussion part. So the floor is pretty open for anybody to ask questions to the speakers. As Jake mentioned, we'll go till 8 o'clock. Then Jake's got a few comments, and then we'll run till 8:30 as well if we're able to stay on later. There are a couple questions here. Again, if you have some, you can enter it publicly into the chat, or if you'd rather just private message me as well. I forgot what my screen name is, Ross or BE, I think. You can send a message to me as well. But there are a couple that have come in since you guys started. First question was, so we didn't talk much about cost of production, but the question was, what do you guys think it costs per acre to make a strip? And I guess that would be equipment costs, maybe fertilizer costs as well. And I think maybe more so, how does that compare to the system you were running before you started strip tilling? that'd be my question to the panelists. You know, maybe let you guys go in the same order that you talked, just to for consistency's sake.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing is like cost compare old system. So we were no-till before, so it's definitely a more expensive system for us. I think putting on the fertilizer and strip till probably be somewhere around like $25 an acre. Just it depends a bit on field size and shape, because I know for us at least we're very fussy on how our headlands are placed. So if it takes a lot of time doing your headlands correctly with the strip till, make sure it's easier for planting in the spring. So that's kind of my thought on cost on it probably. So honestly, when compared to the conventional, I have no clue what it costs.
So in our case, the cost similar, give or take, we throw in the custom $25 an acre, but we looked at it for it's better for soil health. We're getting better utilizing our fertilizer in the strip. 4 years in, putting true cost to it, we're still, I can't tell you exactly, but we're saving on fuel. We sold our big cultivator, so we just have a little cultivator for ditches and little odds and ends. We do have an extra cost as the manpower to run it is more specific versus hiring a guy to run a cultivator. It's more someone who's planted corn and harvested corn. So we have more expensive man, so to speak, doing that. But at the end of the day, our yields have significantly went up from our old system, which was still not a heavy tillage, but a minimum tillage. We were tilling in the fall and then 2-pass cultivator in the spring, broadcasting fertilizer across the board. I can't give it a true number, but it's definitely there. We are coming out ahead.
Jake, do you have any comments on cost reduction compared to what you were doing before?
Well, in our situation where we were side dressing manure since 2000, I haven't purchased really any fertilizers since then. And for us, soil health is a huge factor in compaction. And I feel this type of doing our work with the strip tiller reduces the compaction component quite a bit. And we're never driving where that plant is planted. Cost wise, I cannot give you a definite. You have to have a better tractor with the precision of RTK GPS. There is some factors there, but you can eliminate a lot of other pieces of equipment as well. So we charge $28 when we do strip tilling, and I think that's a very fair price, considering the reduction of other tillage requirements and again, the soil health aspect of it. I think it has a benefit there.
Yeah, so on our end here, I guess when I say conventional tillage, for us, that kind of means just dropping the cultivators as deep as we can in the summer and coming back in the spring. I don't think that costs us any more than running a strip tiller. Definitely some upfront cost to owning a strip tiller and the GPS that goes with it. Yeah, there's a lot of variables in it. I think it's definitely cheaper than like a disc ripper or a plow if you're gonna do the math on it. But yeah, you have to have the equipment base to do it for sure. We haven't eliminated any equipment, which is one issue I have. It's just a lot of equipment costs, but it really reduces I find it reduces the workload for us in the spring, which is kind of nice. And if I had to give it a handicap, I've kind of always said I'd give up 5 to 8 bushels of corn to stick with strip till, and we haven't given that up just from the side by sides we've done with our conventional method of tillage.
So fairly similar yield still, Kyle, to what you guys were before then?
That's right. We've had some farms the last couple of years that we have disc rip sections of versus strip till, and it's kind of hard to put the fertility and everything into that and keep track of it all. But I'm by no means disappointed in the strip till, and really find that it looks a bit tougher in the spring compared to full till. But by the fall, you're usually happier with the strips because it carries the equipment a lot nicer.
Ah, cool. So next question was question for Jake Kraayenbrink and Kyle. I think you said you were twin rowing soybeans as well, so I think this applies to you too. What seeding rate do you do when you're doing twin row soys on the strips? Do you make any adjustments to if you're doing 15s or 7.5s or whatever before doing your twin row soybeans?
Okay, can you hear me there?
Yep.
Okay, we've gone to about 60,000 seeds per acre with the twin rows. There is we don't have a twin row planter, so what we end up doing is we go up and down the field just off about 8 inches, 4 inches off center each way. So you need your GPS again. But we just really pleased with what we see with the soybeans that come. We were over 200,000 prior to that on 7.5 inch rows. So we feel there's the soybeans. Yeah, we've really been happy with that. And then if you do need to come in with anything, any kind of sprayer, you don't do the damage to what's in the field, because you can avoid running over the soybeans to great deal. Yeah, that's where we're at with that.
Am I unmuted there? Yeah. So we I guess at our place we kind of went from a no-till drill to a planter and strip tiller, twin row planter, all at the same time. So going from, now we work twin rowing with the drill, but yes, we for sure have cut back. I would say a lot of times up in that 200,000 seeds with the drill, no tilling, especially in the corn stalks. We're down to 160 in a lot of spots now. I would credit that more to the planter than the strips, but for sure we can we will cut our rates if that strip tiller runs in front of the soybean planter. We can cut that rate a bit more. We have found the emergence is more uneven if we're running the strip tiller and corn stalks ahead of planting soys, and a little bit more even at harvest too, I think.
There's still a couple follow-up questions on the twin row bean front, so I'll ask you guys those as well. So the next one was, how difficult do you guys find it to keep those twin rows centered on those strips in comparison to just 30-inch corn rows? And either Jake or Kyle, whichever you wants to answer.
Okay, like the bean row, again, it depends on how well your GPS is set up a lot of times and in that, but the beans, if they go in and out, if we're not 8 inches, if we're 10 inches or 6 inches don't see a big, you see it in the spring, you think, oh boy, we really we messed up, we didn't get that strip as wide as we wanted, or but we don't seem to see a difference in the yield very much. Corn on the strips is if everything's planted, if everything's done straight and fine, then it's not an issue neither.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, the Orthman does make a fairly wide strip, I think, from what I've seen compared to others, and it's definitely not crowned as much as some. So the corn seems to be a pretty non-issue. Obviously, we're running good GPS and we talk a lot between me and Dad. He does all the planting, so you just have to have a good game plan. But with the soybeans, he's got to do a lot of shifting. Doesn't seem to bother them too much if they're off, but I will comment, when we go to white beans, we 30-inch rowed some white beans and corn stalks on strips, and it was all good. And we've been doing twin rows the last couple of years, and I think with the twin row, if the planter wanders a bit, you get into a bit of colder, lumpier soil and a bit slow emergence. It's been I think it is hurting us at harvest a bit. We get spraying them off a bit too early and picks a little high. So we're going to go back to 30-inch whites, I think.
I like to say too, I think we're gonna start rolling all our fields before we plant them too, just to help keep that planter straighter, not wander.
And one last question again, just as a follow-up, last one for the twin row beans is, could you guys just explain a little bit more about your planter setup? You know, what row widths you're doing, what kind of planters you're using, any fertilizer placement in that system?
Well, we have an 8-row strip tiller, and we had a 12-row corn planter. I had a maxi merge, and now we have a harvest planter that we use. We don't use any fertilizer at all with our system because the fertility of our soil is fairly high anyways. But forget the question, Ben, maybe rephrase it for me.
Yeah, just like equipment setup, what kind of row unit widths, what kind of planter setup? You mentioned you're not using fertilizer.
Okay, so we before what we have done was we were a little bit more primitive, but we would have the strip straight, and then we would come in with a tractor without GPS, and we would put the drawbar off on a 45 so that we were about 4 inches off center, and we would just the driver had to drive straight, and then he would turn around, go back, and so then you would have about 8 inches difference in width on your rows. Now we're using a tractor with a GPS, and we just set the GPS off 4 inches off center each way, and that seems to, it probably depending on the operator is better or easier to do than what we had before, but it works, both work fine.
So right now, Jake, you're just corn planter, but doing 2 passes to get those twin rows. Then is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we'll have 12-row corn planter go up and down the field in the same up and down.
And Kyle, just curious if you could make some quick comments on your soybean twin row planter setup as well.
Yeah, it's just a John Deere split row planter that we bought a twin row kit for. Moves all the row units over, so we're a 7.5 twin with whatever that is, a 22.5 gap in between, and it works fine. We actually had our old air seeder switch to 7.5-inch twins 1 year as well, and really tricky to stay on the strip with that air seeder in twins, but it in the end, it pretty much is the same. I think with soybeans, they seem to grow no matter what.
Awesome, thanks. We'll get out of the twin row soybean questions here. And so next one, general question for all 4 of you guys is, do you have any trouble moving guidance lines between brands of monitors or brands of equipment, trying to make strip tillers and planters line up in your operation at all?
No, because we're all one brand. That's for us. Purposely done that. So.
That keeps it simple.
We're the same. Basically, we're all one brand, but the sprayer, I mean, Cornrows, just we hand steer it. But yeah, everything else is all one. It's all set up prior. All lines are set up prior to spring, put into the machines, and we run the same lines every year. So
did you say hand steering planter right now, Tyler?
No, sprayer.
Oh, sprayer. So
run a Raven sprayer. So we do in the cornrows. Once the corn's up, we do hand steer it. But everything, yeah, no, the planter and strip tiller on RTK around your system. So.
Yeah, we're sucked into Mother Deer with the GPS, all one color. No issues with guidance lines. Do a good cleanup every year on the displays. And one thing I must say about headlands though is the strip till guy's got to really be talking to the planter guy on the radio and just let him know how you laid everything out, because that's where the issue is going to come.
Yeah, so that's something we've heard talking with a lot of guys is, you know, it's hard to throw anybody on a strip tiller like you can with a cultivator. You almost need a planter driver driving the strip tiller. Would you say, Kyle? I've heard from a lot of guys, or?
Yeah, that's right. We have a really good guy who's helped us out a lot of years running the cultivator, but I tend to do the strip tilling, and that is one of the issues I have, is I get caught in the sprayer and the strip tiller at the same time. It gets a little busy, but oh well.
And Jake, do you have any comments to follow up on the guidance lines and monitors?
Yeah, we had changed brands, and we found that it was really important that the technicians understood that we were side dressing manure into our corn, and when the equipment can do it, the time that it takes to set up, we found was it takes quite a bit of know-how how to do it, and it could be a source of frustration. But when it's set up nicely and going, I'm not scared to that equipment can't do it. It's just you need to have that time just to make sure it's set up right.
Great, thanks. So the next question was to Mike. Mike, they were just wondering, the road cleaners on the Terraforge units look fairly big. Do you ever have issues with them being too aggressive and throwing too much dirt out of that strip? And I guess, again, with the other three as well, maybe not just a road cleaner discussion, but any issues operating and keeping soil contained in your strip, whether it's speed or ground conditions or anything else?
So yeah, I'll start with the road cleaners. They have a spring up pressure on them, so we probably only run about 10 psi down, very minimum. I play with it a little bit, but not a whole lot. They're basically just bouncing on the ground. I guess in wheat stubble, we don't have the chaff spreader on our year, which is something we need next time. But so basically in chaff rows, we're trying to knock some of that chaff out. But other than that, not trying to do a whole lot. On Ben's other thing, the main reason why we bought the Terraforge unit, because it has an extra set of coulters on ours. So ours has containing coulters right beside the shank, and then it has a hiller coulters right behind it. So it's basically just a rolling disc all the way around the shank. So that was the main reason why we purchased that unit, because we didn't want any soil blowing out of the strip. So that was honestly the number one reason why we bought a Terraforge, just so we knew all that soil was going to be in the strips.
On our machine, for keeping it contained, the soil where it's got really large containment coulters, which helps but we do have to monitor speed. A lot of time I like to run at 9 miles an hour. In certain conditions, 8.5 is better, and there's times we can go 11 if the tractor will do it. It's based on soil type. We don't have road cleaners on it at this point. The next machine will have them. For similar to what Mike said, we don't have the Deere's premium spreader, and we deal with a little bit of chaff issue once in a while, which would help. But with the large containment coulters on the soil where it seems to keep everything right into the strip.
Jake, do you have any comments for keeping soil in the strip, or do you have any issues with that at all with the Gladiator?
I don't think we struggle with that too much. No, we can adjust the width of the strip by the coulters. There's the adjustment on there, and I haven't noticed that to be an issue. I find that as long as the soil is dry enough that we just don't just put a slit in the ground with the shank, and we can get that soil to move, we can make a nice strip.
On the Orthman, the one complaint I have is the road cleaner. It's completely fixed, and especially with the 3-point hitch toolbar here, really it's kind of an issue if you have to adjust those. The one thing we did that really helped, we put a hydraulic top link in so we can manipulate that bar as to whether it's tipped forward or back, and that really helps us adjust things quick. We were blowing some strips out the first year, mainly because that shank was running too deep, I think, and catching some damp clay, and just seemed to shallow it up and do a better job.
So next question again for all four of you guys is, when you start strip tilling, are you planting headlands first, or do you plant them last?
We plant them last, but we plant almost all the headlands last. something we were doing before strip till. We also strip till our headlands last as well, though. We'll do, I call it pending on the field. If I can see the old corn rows, I don't score the headlands shallow to strip tiller because everything should be the same. But if we're on a new farm, I'll run it real shallow on the headlands, like just an inch deep, just make a line so I know where to lift the strip tiller my back.
We strip headlands last, but we actually do plant them first, partly just of old habits. We do have clutches and all that now and the technology, but at this point they're planted first but stripped last.
We plant. Am I on there, Ben?
Yep, we can hear you, Jake.
Okay, we'll strip till the headlands last, but we will plant the headlands first as the planter's got the automatic off shutoffs, and that way the planter shuts the rows off when it hits the headland rows.
We strip till the headlands last, yes, both spring and fall, and then but we do plant the headlands first. We have row shutoffs, and in 2019 I went around all the fields with the ATV and made a nice boundary so that the row shutoffs would work on an internal boundary. And then it was 2019 and it was late, and we said get planting corn. So, and that's the way it stayed.
So overwhelmingly, everybody's pretty much doing headlands first still in a strip till system then. I think I'll pause a bit. Jake, you had some comments you wanted to go through for strip till video series and stuff going on. So we'll take 5 minutes or so for that, and then we'll go right back into questions again.
Thanks, Ben. So I'm just going to share my screen here, just a moment. So I'll be briefer than 5 minutes. Those of you who've already taken part in this series, you've seen this now a couple times, but for anybody who's new joining in, this is just to make you aware that there's going to be a strip till video series coming soon by Farm and Food Care. It features a number of different farmers, including Mike, who you've heard from tonight. You can see the six different videos that are going to be a part of this series. They're all going to be pretty digestible, so on average about 5 or 6 minutes long. And we'd encourage you to check them out when they come out. Anyone who registered for these events through Eventbrite, you will get a link from us as soon as these come out. Also, just to cross promote a little bit, Golden Horseshoe Soil and Crop Improvement Association is going to be having another strip till event this Thursday at 7:30 a.m. It's a BYOB, bring your own breakfast, and it's going to feature a couple different growers within the Golden Horseshoe area who are farming on kind of the two extremes in terms of soil types. So please check out the Golden Horseshoe website. Details will be posted there shortly. And lastly, for those of you who are CCAs, here's your chance to claim your CEU credits for this evening. You've got 3 methods: either scan the QR code on the screen here, or you can enter the poll maker. You can enter your information into the poll maker link. I will add that into the chat as soon as I stop sharing my screen. And a third option for anybody calling in through the phone and doesn't have access to the link, you can email ann.verhalen@ontario.ca, and Ann will make sure that you get your CEU credits. So with that, as we've done with the past number of sessions, anybody who's got to go, feel free to go. I get the sense that there's still more questions that need to be asked. So we're going to continue till 8:30. But just before I hand it back to Ben, just like to thank again our 4 speakers tonight: Mike, Tyler, Jake, and Kyle. Also, thanks to my OMAFRA colleagues who've helped out tonight: Nicole Rabe, Sebastian Belliard, Andrew Barry, and the rest of the soil team, and of course Ben for moderating. So Ben, I will now hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Jake. So I think still on the planter side of things, one question came in: have you changed anything from a downforce perspective on your planter going into strip till? But I think we can go on other topics as well. You know, has anything else really changed in terms of planter setup now in a strip till system compared to what you were doing before, beyond just downforce as well? But downforce was the specific ask in this question.
For us, no, because our planter does no-till as well. So we had something, we don't have hydraulic downforce, that's what we'll go to next, but we do have airbags in all of our planters, so we can get the pressure we need. All of our planters were built with ballasts tanks for adding weight if needed. Never needed in strip till, but no-till and no-till we sometimes need it. We have added row cleaners on the planter. That's one thing because of strip till. We have mixed feelings on it. Depends on the operator. I would say depends on how much they get used. If it's my brother, they almost get lifted right up. My dad lifts them up. I normally use them a little bit. But yeah, that's one thing we have added. They have the air cylinders on them so you can play with them in the caps.
Just curious, Mike, when you mentioned you guys, like you yourself use them a little bit, but your dad and your brother lift them up. Instead of just running them a little bit, it's just having to keep an eye on them and that sort of thing, or what? Why the difference in operation?
I like to brush off as much, like try to make sure all the residues off of them. I think my dad's used to the no-till where you had residue always, because on our no-till corn planter there is no residue cleaners. And then my brother, I guess he's just getting lots of input, so it's a little bit dependent. I will admit there has been times I might have been a little bit too aggressive with them. If you have a really nice mellow strip, it can blow off that top, because our strips are probably burned up about 2 inches still in the spring. So if you're a little bit too aggressive, you can blow off that nice dry loose dirt on top. So there is certain points where you got to play with it quite a bit, because our farms are very variable. Like we got blow sand in one corner with the hard clay in the next corner, so we got to play around with it a little bit.
We had a neighbor that had a heavy soil, and he took his first cut of hay off, and he had to decide whether he was going to plow that and work it down, or we're going to strip till it. And we strip tilled it twice because it was just so hard. And what we did was we got him to roll that strip down. And this is maybe not a planter setup, but it was preparation of the soil more so that when the planter did go into that there was a nice firm seed bed that was nicely worked up for him, and he was very surprised how pleasantly how that corn crop did come about with that condition. So that's maybe not a planter setup as much as a soil setup, that if the soil set up nice, the planter will do the job.
Sorry, Tyler, I think we skipped over you there.
That's all right. Our planter, some of the things we'd like to change, we're waiting on our trials of fertilizer to make new planter purchase, but we have added, we do have airbags on ours. We do that. They're manually adjust airbags, but we've moved the controls right to the cab, so at least we do adjust a little more. But the big things we made for strip till, we've added drag chains out to the back of the planter just to help level off that strip when we were done. We've changed our closing wheels. We're running Yetter twisters. Again, just in some of the more adverse conditions, sometimes we get in our heavy clay. It just help. We're finding they help close that seed trench a little better. And then row cleaners. Again, right now we have screw adjust ones. Next planter will be air adjust. But right now we have actually adjusted them down from where we used to run them a little more in the strip till, just to help clean the very top of that strip off. If there is any residue, push it out of the way. Next planter will have a lot more bells and whistles, but we need another 2 years of data to verify what we want so we can purchase that.
We went from we planted 1 year on strips with a box planter. It had airbags. It worked nice. I miss it. It was simple planter, but we ended up switching to this twin row planter mainly for white beans and soybeans. So we use it for corn obviously too, and it has full independent down pressure. It works amazing. Thought it was going to be something that we needed in the strips, but once we actually got it, we found that strip is so nice and loamy usually in the spring, and you don't have any tire tracks there, so it's actually trying to lift. The shocker was when we went to go plant a bunch of conventional corn. It's it's wanting to slam that unit down because of all the tracks, everything that you're hiding under that nice cultivated ground. It was just it was an eye opener for sure. You could see a lot of traffic, not saying it hurt the corn or that conventional was a bad way to deal with it, but it was different.
So that's kind of an interesting comment. You think going between conventional till and strip till, you're working kind of even ground, but obviously, like you said, when you actually run the equipment over it, it kind of shows you something different, given the lack of tire tracks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of it is any just spring applied manure or angled tracks cultivating one day too early. It just it really showed up compared to the strips. Not saying we haven't strip tilled the day too early too, but you're just not driving over where you're planting.
Oh, that's cool. So the next one's kind of shifting gears into the fertility front. This question was to you, Jake, but I think the other guys can address it as well. The question was, when you're well, in this case for Jake, when you're applying manure over time, are you applying it in the same zone, or does that shift across the field to move nutrients across the field? But for you guys, other guys that aren't Jake as well, what's your nutrient strategy in terms of strips? Are you building your corn zones over time, or are you moving strips across the field to build a whole field? And I guess the second part of that, how are you addressing fertility and the other crops that aren't being stripped and fertilized in those strips as well, like wheat or beans, especially if you're not twin rowing beans? Kind of a three-part question, but Jake, we'll maybe start with you because the original question was about manure.
Okay, this is the first time we've tried to create a hot zone, so to speak, in the fall, and put the oats in. But we will put about 2,500 gallons of manure down that way. And then we'll come back in the spring. We don't use any starter. And we'll come back mid to late June and put around 4,000 to 5,000 gallons of hog manure side dressing into the corn. That's our program for corn. We will move the strip over to the center of the corn the following spring for the soybeans on twin rows, and we will not apply. We may occasionally broadcast manure on the corn stalks if it's an early fall, just a couple thousand gallons to break that corn stalk down, but otherwise we won't go back in with anything. After the beans come off, we'll put the 15 inches of manure down around 2,000 gallons, 2,500, and then early April, depending what the spring's like, we'll apply. This year we tried something different. We applied manure twice, and we've seen a significant difference in yield where we did do that to the wheat. We'll broadcast on top about 2,500 gallons, and we came back and did half the field. I think it was 2-3 weeks later again, and we definitely seen a yield increase with the wheat where we did that. And that is basically our program. Then from wheat, we'll go back into corn, and we'll try to go back to the same program where after the wheat comes off, we'll go with manure, create that hot zone with the oats for the corn that will be planted the following year.
Thanks, Jake. Just curious if Kyle, Mike, and Tyler, if you guys had comments from a fertilizer perspective on that question.
I'll start, I guess. We move our strips every time we get back in them. We don't try and make a hot zone because where we strip till is generally a 3-way rotation. We do put a lot of fertilizer in that strip when we do corn. There's no fertilizer right now going down the bean pass. That could change. And then we're putting quite a bit of fertilizer in furrow with the wheat, trying to make up some of the spots. So that's kind of how we're handling this, more of a 2-part. We will do some variable rate spreading of fertilizer if we need to, if we're finding we're not keeping up with getting that fertilizer in through the strips.
For us, the corn program, originally when we started, we were hoping to strip same strips every time, but we ran into issues. We don't have row cleaners. Actually plugging the machine with balling up with root balls, especially on corn after soybeans. So the corn was the following year. It's the corn root balls the year before that causing problems. So we moved over, but we are applying just basically crop removal rates now based on historical yield data, variable rated, as long as the levels in that farm are where we want them. Our soybean program, we're right now broadcasting basically crop removal, again, variable rate crop removal rate ahead of the drill. No telling them. It's amazing how many of those drills are in the seed furrow, but we did a bunch of plots this year and hopefully working towards putting in furrow fertilizer with our soybeans, just to, again, better utilize that fertilizer, better for the environment. We're not broadcasting over the top, but trying to find what replicates what was working. Wheat, again, it's the map in furrow, and then that's when we do we soil sample, do our maintenance. Whatever needs to be done, lime, it's zone sampled and pop up, and then plant a cover crop to scavenge that and carry on with corn again.
Am I still on there, Ben? My video's froze.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kyle.
Okay, yeah, kind of like Tyler said, we use wheat as a clean slate and do any building or whatever we have to do, and then we're making our corn strips in that wheat stubble. The only time, if we're in a strict corn soybean rotation, we do put some soybean fertility down with twin rows and then strip corn right back on top of those. Whether it does anything, I don't know, but it might as well be there where the fertilizer is rather than beside it.
So again, kind of still on the P and K fertilizer side of things. One question came in and asked, now that you're banning fertilizer in the zone, how do you guys manage soil sampling when you're trying to do fertility management in those fields with the banded fertilizer? Just curious if you guys have any comments on soil sampling in a strip-till fertility perspective.
So we try to do our soil sampling before we strip till. So we do it normally in wheat stubble, so they don't really know where our strip was. So I guess it's just at random. We have moved with our Dawn, we were mixing the fertilizer quite a bit. And I know Kyle mentioned it too. We have moved our pipe on our shank unit. It's not really a pipe, it's just a hose, and we end up moving it back about 4 or 5 inches behind the shank so the fertilizer didn't drop all the way down. So we're trying to not get a concentrate band. It is banded, but not to a very band. So I try and get the fertilizer mixed with the full width of the strip, about 3 to 4 inches deep. So, but yeah, we just soil sample at random and get what we get. So.
For us, as we're coming around to the next rotation with corn there, we're sampling, and I think actually Ben had a video, but it's basing on so many between the rows, so many on the rows, and trying to get blended, but we're all zone sampled. So based on little historical yield data, topography, just personally knowing the farms, and soil type, several different factors. So that's how we come up with the zones, and then it's sampled based on that and go from there.
Jake, yourself, do you any comments on soil sampling in a strip till system or injecting manure in zones?
No, there's no really so we got the what we call the hot zone for the corn to be planted the following year, and then we side dress manure into the corn when the corn is up. So the field basically gets manure everywhere anyways, so we're not concerned when we do soil sampling trying to find a strip or not.
And in our case, anything that's in wheat stubble tends to get manure. We soil sample before the manure, but it's hard with kind of 3 different types of manure, what each field's going to get all the time. Yeah, we just kind of stick the probe wherever, work in different zones as far as topography and soil type. And then anything that doesn't have manure, we are kind of, I guess, banding for the corn and then banding directly in between the corn rows for the soybeans. So it's moving 15 inches, I guess, there.
Tyler did allude to it there, but yeah, there's been a little bit of research. We haven't done it ourselves in Ontario, but certainly when you go into fields, especially in an operation where they're keeping those strips in the same spot in the, like, corn years are always in the same rows. Certainly you can go in and find higher levels in those bands. There's been a little bit of research done, and I think it was Illinois that showed if you take fertilizer and you broadcast in a no-till field, and then you want to try to replicate that in a strip-till field, that number where fertilizer has just been placed in a band, same amount of fertilizer, but just band placed, that if you take, one core in that band or in the strip for every 2 or 3 cores you take on the outside, so in between the non-fertilized areas of the field, you can generally get an average number that's fairly similar to the no-till case where fertilizer is broadcast across the whole field. So that's at least one little piece of research I'm aware of that's tried to at least look into that question and try to answer that soil testing question. So I guess shifting gears a little bit away from P and K, moving towards nitrogen. There's a number of questions here just asking about nitrogen programs. How have you guys changed since you've moved into strip till? What kind of rates are you putting up front? How are you doing your bulk nitrogen applications if they're in crop? How much nitrogen do you need to get from pre-plant timing to your later in crop timing? Just kind of some of those questions if you kind of go through your nitrogen strategies.
So originally on our no-till planter, we were nitrogen all up front. Then when we went to strip till, we started side dressing. And we side dressed for a few years, but we are moving back to all of our nitrogen up front. It's not on the planter now, but that is the plan, to put it back on the planter. What we have found over the last couple of years, strip till roots, from what we can see, grow more straight down. When you are side dressing right in the middle and you hit like a dry period, we have seen our corn struggle a bit to get that nitrogen. So from the plots we have done, it looks better to do it up front, make sure it's available if it does get dry, and then come with a rescue pack if we have to, if we get the wrong weather. So basically right now we will do 20 gallons weed and feed. And then since we don't have the nitrogen on the planter, the side dresser follows same day or within a couple of weeks of the planter and finishes the rest. We are evaluating our nitrogen. We're just playing around with that. But we're about 180 pounds total with our corn program right now.
Congratulations. So we're running a weed and feed up front, 20 gallons. There's 25 in the strip, so we're 85 up front, and then we're coming through with a variable rate Y drop program. The maps again made the experience, population, historical yield data, topography, soil type. There's quite a few factors to kind of piece it together, and environment. If based on projected yield, almost what the crop looks like, we can adjust that on the go. So with the Y drop, it goes right to the root. So this year we were fairly dry, and it's amazing how much gets into that corn plant, putting it right at the root ball, right at the base. A lot of the corn didn't look back wasn't starving for N when we thought it actually might be for not getting rain, but every little dew just puts that little ring around the base.
Jake, yourself in a manure scenario, what's your nitrogen management strategy there, or is there one?
Well, we don't really have a strategy other than that we've been doing for the last 20 years side dressing into the corn about 4,000 to 5,000 gallons. When that happens, you know the neighbors will say, "Boy, your corn sure turned nice and green." Not that it wasn't green, but it really gives that corn a boost. We find that even especially in a dry year, that manure does wonders for that corn at that time. And but yeah, we use finishing manure, and that's it.
Yeah, we are putting down about 80 units of N up front in the spring strip. Like I said, we switched to about 50% of that being ESN for a crop safety reason. I think we're going to try to sneak up to about 100 units. We just always seem to get nervous before we wide drop. It hasn't seemed to burn us yet. And then kind of coming back, if that corn looks like a real good crop, we were about 180 units of N total if it's, looking like the plus 200 crops. So yeah, I would second Mike's comments about the strip till roots, though. They are definitely straight down as to fanned out in our conventional worked grounds. So I do think there's maybe something to be said there about trying to get it close.
That's kind of interesting. Both of you guys have mentioned, I've heard a number of other people say the same thing. It might be something worth looking into. The fact that when you dig those roots, it doesn't seem like they get into the rows like you would see in a conventional system. I was just going to touch on you again there, Kyle. Before you went to 50-50 urea ESN, were you all urea for the 80 pounds of nitrogen? And was that getting hot in your system?
Yeah, so we did run straight urea the first 2 years, I guess it was, along with that fertilizer nozzle being out front. It was bringing it real, like we're only kind of working planter depth in the spring, so it was bringing it back almost more banded than when it was coming out of that fertilizer nozzle, and we were having some emergence problems. Some of that was due to fertilizer. We also we just had some other issues going on that first year. Found the planter coulters maybe hurting our seed trench a bit too, but we seem to have a lot better stand now that we've got a better handle on everything. I don't know if we can attribute that all to being ESN or not, but I'm comfortable in the fact now with the ESN, I'm comfortable to creep that up to 90 or 100 of actual N this year.
Then still kind of on the nitrogen side of things, moving away from rates and plans, there was another question. How do you guys adjust rates in season? Do you take into account differences in weather or rainfall and make some adjustments in season? Mike, you said you're playing around a little bit with variable rate as well. What kind of other decisions are going in if you guys are making decisions, variable rate in the field, or I'll say variable season nitrogen too, making changes based on what the season's given you up to that point?
So their variable rate nitrogen, right now we're all up front, so we're not really looking at the season. But when we make the decisions on the rates, we're looking at basically yield maps in the soil. So I'm not 100% sure on how they're getting that because we're still trying to figure it out. But we're trying to figure out, we're finding some of the higher yielding zones. Doesn't mean it needs the most nitrogen, just because generally the organic matter is higher there. So that's kind of stuff we're playing around with. It's just trying to see like what we can get of the soil. We're not doing tests on it because we're doing it all near the front. We're just trying to think ahead what that soil is going to do. Our plan long term, if we get wet summer or something, we'll come back with wide drops on a sprayer to add some nitrogen if we get the long year. But we haven't seemed to have that problem lately, or for us, because we always been do nitrogen up front with our no-till corn planter, and we had very good luck over 30 years they've been doing that. So.
We're using, like I said, the maps are tentatively made ahead of time. Topography, there's population, past yield data, a lot of soil types put in there, and then the rates adjusted literally day before we go to the field. Also, we do use a little bit of satellite imagery. We have sent samples away, tissue samples. We've done soil through what's a precision plantings unit. Their soil samples, and never been satisfied with either of those. We've had better luck with just pure experience. So it's literally done. We make the decision the day before we go to the field with the Y drops, and it's looking at the weather forecast, what the corn crop looks. If it looks like a tremendous crop, we'll take that factor of we have our zones made, pushing it higher, and if it looks like it's not going to be as good a crop, we can take that number as a factor lower. And actually in the field, I can adjust it on the go as well, just changing that factor number.
Jake, with manure, are you making any adjustments at all, given differences in years or landscape across your field? Any adjustments in a manure system?
No, the only thing we've been trying to do is how to apply the manure when the crop needs it, if we can do that better job of that, and less disturbance of the soil. And compaction is a really big factor too that we really want to avoid as much as possible. So those are areas that we look at, but otherwise our program is much the same every year.
Yeah, over here we're kind of going by the seat of our pants when it comes time to side dress. You know, what's the crop looking like? What's the price of 28? Price of corn? Need to maybe get better at that. We did do some nitrate testing, probably about 10 leaf, and we had conventional right beside strip tilled with spring nitrogen down beside no spring strips 28 just on top, and was surprised that the there was a concentrated band of nitrogen yet in that spring strip where we had the ESN and urea. Didn't do enough tests to say that I'm swearing by that though either.
So we got through most of the questions. I'll finish up with just this last one. One question was, from a horsepower requirement perspective, did it change the lineup on your farms at all when you guys moved to strip till? Were you already there with, your primary tillage equipment if you were coming from that kind of system? And do you have enough to run your strip till, or do you wish you had more out front to make things go smoother?
So yeah, we have 8 series on our strip tiller. Fairly big enough in my opinion. I just don't really want to go to 4-wheel drive. We want to stay with the front wheel assist. If they had a bigger front wheel assist tractor, I probably would have it. Because we are around engine horse, we're around 30 horse. So we're probably sitting around that 25 horse a row. But I think we can definitely have a bit more. But if we drove faster, I think we'd get a better strip, but then we'd have another issue to try to get more fertilizer through the cart quicker. So it's one or the other. So right now, I think we're pretty well lined up. That tractor we did buy for the strip tiller, because before that, our biggest tractor was about 180 horse, because that's all we needed for the grain bug and stuff. But we did buy a big 82 for the strip.
When we started, we had an 8R on the front of ours, and it was juiced up. It's pushing more than it should, and it just wouldn't do it. In the heavy clay, we need speed. With the coulter machine, also, we really like speed. So we ended up we had an articulate from our past tillage practices, 375 horse articulate. We threw it on the front. It's better, but even then, there's a lot of times I wish I had another 50, 75 horse on top of that. Pull a 12 row, but the strip tiller we have is heavy and it likes speed at 9 mile an hour. If we're doing 6 mile an hour, I could put half the tractor, half the size, but to get up to that 9, 10 mile an hour, it needs speed. It needs horsepower.
Jake?
Yeah, we had an 8400 to start with. It did the job fine. We need about the same horsepower to run the strip tiller nicely as the side dressing manure when we were using the shank. We would side dress at 6-7 mile an hour. Strip tilling, we're usually closer to 8. We got a little bigger tractor now, just with what we're doing with Kraayenbrink and so forth. But yeah, it does require horsepower. You want speed. There's a big difference in your strip if you don't have speed.
I guess we actually downsized tractors when we started strip tilling. We had a 9000 series Deere pulling the ripper in the fall. That there was some other changes. We did some downsizing with custom works, so I wouldn't say if we were to farm the same amount with full conventional disc ripper, we'd likely just use the same size tractors we have on that 12 row strip tiller. It's a bit of a pull with that Orthman shank, and everyone else talking about speed. I would like more speed, but I'd be picking up the pieces with all the rocks we have around here. So
Awesome. Well, thanks. That just about does us for time. Really appreciate you guys being able to share what you did here this evening and being able to answer some questions for the crowd too. Also, before we end, I'll turn it back to Jake if he has any last comments. But I really need to thank Jake Monroe. Jake was really the driving force behind this, and this was kind of his idea to get going. So really, a lot of this, there's a team of us behind it, but it was really Jake that was the driver behind it. So yeah, thanks to all of our speakers who have spoken these last 3 sessions, and thanks a lot to Jake Monroe and the OMAF Soils team who helped put this on. Anyways, I'll pass it back to you, Jake, if you have any last comments to go through.
Sure. Thank you, Ben, and thanks for those kind words. And it definitely was a team effort. It was the OMAFRA soil team behind this. And Ben's not a regular member, but maybe an honorary member. Ben, thanks for your contributions during the series. So just a few closing remarks. First of all, thanks again to the speakers and all the speakers who presented over the last couple of weeks. Secondly, I've had a number of questions about recordings for those who haven't been able to make all the events. We will be posting them to the Field Crops YouTube page once we've done some editing. So before Christmas, we'll have them up on the Field Crops page. We will send you a link through Eventbrite. Everybody who registered through Eventbrite, just check your email and you'll get a link for those videos. Also, for a survey for us to get some feedback on what you've liked about these events, what you think we could improve. Take a look in your email over the next week or so, and we'll be getting in touch with the survey. We'd also love to hear from you as to what other topics you might like to participate in and hear about in the new year. There's lots of different topics out there, and we'd like to know what there's interest in. So with that, thanks to everybody who showed up over the last couple of weeks, and I think we'll end it there. Have a good night, everybody.